useReducer, the scariest hook out there. So scary that developers would rather use two hooks, use state and use context, instead of using the one that rules them all. The only hook that uses the Redux pattern. In this video, I will take you to the dark side, but before we get started, I want you to repeat after me. Dispatch action to Reducer, dispatch action to Reducer, dispatch action to Reducer. Because that is all it takes to use Redux. Over here in VS Code in my main app component, I have two buttons, one for incrementing and the second for decrementing. I also have a h1 tag where I will display a state where useReducer will either increment or decrement the state. So I'll call my useReducer function, and this will return two values just like useState, except for the first one will be the state and the second one will be a function called dispatch. Now dispatch is a function in a sense just like setState, only with a lot more control. So inside of my onClick event for my increment button, I'll call my dispatch function and then provide to it an object as an argument with a field of type, and I'll set that equal to the action that I want to dispatch. Now this action could be any string that I make up, so long as this action exists in my reducer. So what exactly is a reducer and where do I create it? A reducer is a function that communicates directly to a local database inside of your browser. This local database is called a store, and it should be able to store the entire state of your application. And the beauty of it is that it exists outside of a component. So no matter in which component you are inside of the application, all you have to do is dispatch an action to this reducer function, and Redux will manage the rest. So I'll create the reducer function on top of my app component, and it takes in two arguments, the state and the action. And inside of the reducer function, we'll add a switch statement and check the action.type, which was the property on the object that we have dispatched. And in case of increment, then we want to return state +1, and in case of decrement, we want to return state -1. Now there is one more question, and that is how exactly does useReducer communicate with the reducer function? Well, useReducer takes in two arguments. The first is the reducer function and the second is its initial state. Now I'll just add the decrement action to my second button, and as you can see, I have state that is being managed outside of my component. Now you might be wondering, why exactly would someone want to do all this? After all, it is a lot more code and we could have used state and context to achieve the same goal. However, at the end of the day, it just boils down to personal preference. I mean, I would not like to keep all my state inside of a parent component and manage it from its children, because that just ruins the whole concept of separate components, and I would rather view each component for what it actually is. In the end, there is always pros and cons to everything, and you always have to weigh out the trade-offs. Just make sure you're not using useReducer when you could be using state, or vice versa. And with that said, stay tuned for the rest of my React Hook videos, and please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and on that bombshell, thanks for watching.